So I spent thousands of dollars treating my back pain when the back wasn't even the main issue at all. And this could be the same mistake that's been keeping you in months of pain and training hard in the gym. So you walk into the clinic, let's say you have shoulder pain. The first thing that they'll look at is the shoulder. You walk in with back pain, the first thing they'll look at is the back. You walk in with hip pain, the first thing they'll look at is the hip, which makes sense. But the crazy part is that they will work on that one area while telling you to not go to the gym for months for some people. And an even bigger issue with this is that the area that you're experiencing pain might not even be the root issue whatsoever. You're just chasing symptoms instead of addressing the root issue. And that's why your pain keeps coming back every few months. By the end of this video, I'll show you why different areas of the body can influence pain symptoms and what I use to address the root issue and get people back to training hard, pain-free in the gym. So I had back pain for years. I had back pain for like 10 years. It inevitably got really, really bad for a period of 3 years where I had nerve pain going down my leg. And, during those 10 years, I did the physio, chiro, massage, Googled everything, rest, stretch. I did everything you can possibly imagine. Pain still kept coming back. I spent thousands of dollars. And it wasn't until I met a really, really good physio who discovered that a lot of my issues were just coming from massive range of motion restrictions in my body. So in this case, I wasn't moving well through my hips, which was putting stress on my lower back. On top of that, my deadlift form wasn't that great. So it was just multiple issues compounded and then eventually led to this, 3 years of suffering essentially. And before I met this physio, every time I would go get treatment, it was just like looking at the back every single time and not looking at anything else. And lo and behold, my pain just kept coming back. Have you ever been stuck in that cycle where you're doing your exercises, you feel pretty good, you get back to the gym, and then the pain just comes back? It's super frustrating. And then meanwhile, you roll out your mat in the corner of the gym, you're doing your rehab exercises while everyone else is hitting PRs in the gym, and it just frustrates you even more. So once I actually worked on fixing my hip restrictions, getting my range of motion back, retraining how I deadlift, using the right progressions, it was not up until then that I finally started to see the pain dissipate. And now I can deadlift close to 500 pounds completely pain-free. And the issue with this traditional rehab approach is that it's treating the body like individual parts when the body moves as this complex system, especially when you're in the gym. Like everything has to move together. And if one thing isn't moving well, it's like a chain, it's gonna affect the rest of the body. So if your shoulder hurts and you just train the shoulder, but if your hips aren't moving well at all, it's gonna affect how your shoulder moves too. And that's why it's so important to look at the system as a whole instead of these just individual parts. So let's dive into what I feel works for lifters specifically. This is personally what I use with all of my clients. I even use this with myself. So it's something that I can attest to working. And the first thing that we want to do is to decrease the pain. Because if you don't decrease the pain, your body's going to have a bunch of tension all over, which is going to restrict your body's ability to move. So decreasing the pain first is going to be number one. And ways that we can do this, there's a wide spectrum of ways. It depends on the person, but what I like to use is low intensity conditioning in this case, which has been shown to decrease pain sensitivity, as well as some breathing exercises to decrease the nervous system's threat of pain. So we want to tap into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the body's ability to chill the hell out. And then we want to do some gentle, range of motion exercises, breathing exercises, low intensity conditioning, relatively easy stuff in this case. And honestly, this can last, for most people, it lasts like a week. You don't want to be doing this for weeks, right? At a certain point, this gets boring. But it is cool to see kind of the pain decrease quite rapidly in this case. So first, manage the pain. If we're working on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being oh my God, I have to go to the hospital because I have so much pain. We want to get this down to a 2, 3, I would say in this case. Now, once we got that dialed in, then we're going to move more into restoring that range of motion that you're missing. So this is where it requires a movement evaluation, a movement assessment, so we can see where these restrictions are actually coming from. So once the pain is dialed down, now we can see how you actually move, because you probably move very, very differently when your pain is very, very high. So it's not going to give the right representation of how you typically move when your pain is a little bit lower. During that movement assessment, we're going to look at everything. We're not just going to look at one specific body part. We'll look at a squat, we'll look at a split squat, we'll look at a push-up, we'll look at a straight leg raise, to assess, lower limb flexibility. So we'll look at shoulder range of motion, hip range of motion, and how all of these move as one unit. We'll look at rotation of the body as well too. And this is where you'll typically see like massive differences for some people. And then like right away, you're like, oh geez, like you're missing a lot of rotation on that right side, for example. Let's address that because that's probably influencing how you move when you're in the gym. So once we find out what the restriction is, then we start to implement some exercises to improve our body's ability to move freely, so we can actually access those range of motions with very minimal pain. So this is where we're using training as the healing tool to drive those adaptations, still keep you in the gym, and improving your range of motion using different modalities in the gym, different exercise variations. This looks vastly different depending on the person. So I don't just want to give out like random exercises here, but what I tend to do in this case, I like to do a lot of unilateral alternating lifts, which is really going to help drive some range of motion in those restricted areas. Very, very, very specific to the individual. Everyone needs a unique approach in this case. And in the next phase, we want to retrain the movement pattern, the thing that you actually want to get back to doing. So like, let's say you're someone who wants to squat really, really heavy or deadlift really heavy or bench heavy. Like we can't just do these unilateral exercises. We can't just do these breathing exercises forever. We want to get you back to doing the thing that you actually love to do. So in this case, we're going to retrain that movement pattern. Now that we built a stronger foundation, because you can access these ranges of motion, your pain is very, very low in this case. For some people, for most people actually, pain is gone in this phase. Now we're going to start retraining that movement pattern using the right progressions. And once again, this looks vastly different depending on people's goals. Like if you're a power lifter versus someone who's doing strongman or someone who's has hypertrophy goals, different progression models work for different people in this case. Like it could go anywhere between like double progression, wave loading, APRE. There's so many ways, there's so many different things here. So you have to select the right one based on the individual's specific goals. But you do want to start retraining the movement pattern in this case and slowly kind of building up the body's capacity, especially since we access these new ranges of motion, which might feel very different on your body right now. So now we're going to introduce load, and then your body's going to know how to handle this load with access to this new range of motion. And that leads me to the last phase, which is the progression model. This is where we start to introduce load. So now that we retrain the movement pattern, with relatively low load, now we start to introduce progression models. Now your body has the range of motion and can move freely. And that's the really fun part, because this is where we start to lift heavy stuff. So just to summarize all of that, in the first phase, we're decreasing pain. That's step number one. You don't want pain to be too high because you're always going to feel restricted. Step number two, that's we're going to start restoring range of motion. This is based on a movement assessment. We're going to see where you're limited, address those restrictions. In phase number three, we're going to start retraining those movement patterns. So that's very specific to the individual, whatever you want to get back to doing. And then in phase four, this is where we introduce load gradually using the right progression protocols. Once again, this varies greatly depending on the individual's goals. So that's what I've used for myself. That's what I used for other lifters as well too. So if we just circle back now to the traditional rehab model approach, let's say you had a back issue and you go to the clinic, they tell you to stop training. Like, yeah, your pain's gonna go away because you literally stopped training. So you decrease the input. If you go back to the gym in this case, have you addressed those underlying restrictions that led to your back injury? No. So what's going to happen? You're probably just going to end up right back where you started. And then you're going to fall in that cycle once again. You're going to get injured, you're going to go back to the clinic, they treat the symptom, and then you're going to become, reliant on this professional fixing your back in this case. When instead, you could have just taken a different route, addressed the root issue while still using training as a healing tool, and stayed in the gym, driving those adaptations, getting access to new ranges of motion, moving better, retraining the movement pattern, and then reintroducing load gradually. Because at the end of the day, like most traditional rehab, the goal is to get you out of pain, but it's not necessarily to get you back in the gym training hard without pain. It prepares you for daily life activities pain-free, which is great for some people. Don't get me wrong. But if you're a lifter and you want to get back to lifting heavy stuff, you need a completely different approach. And what's even worse when you stop training is your body becomes even more hypersensitive to pain. So it starts to perceive all these heavier movements as something threatening. Your nervous system literally starts to perceive it as something threatening because you're like, I hurt myself doing this thing. Now I'm not doing this thing anymore. So it's like double downing on the fact that like this thing injured you. So that fear is just going to stay in the back of your mind, which is going to affect how you move, affect how you lift. It's going to affect how you feel about yourself. It's going to affect your confidence, and for some people, even their identity as people who love training hard and being in the gym. And that's why I like to use training as the healing tool, because we're using graded exposure. We're slowly getting you back into the heavy lifting that you used to do pain-free, one step at a time, being in that environment that you love so much. And that's gonna have a massive effect, not only physically, but psychologically in the healing process for you. So I hope that was helpful. If you're someone who loves lifting and is currently experiencing pain, has gone through everything I discussed in this video, seeing the physio, the chiro, the massage, looking online, seeing a bunch of stretches, you have like 30 people saved on Instagram in your save folder for like different stretches and stuff, and you're not getting relief. I did film a 12-minute video, which you could see below, which talks about my approach on how I help lifters, use training as a healing tool to get back to lifting completely pain-free. So if that sounds like you, click the link below, and I'll see you next time.